Time. Okay, Ciaran is a good friend of mine, so it's easy for me to introduce him. I think he and I first met, met 15 years ago when he did his first ARISS contact from Bugbrook School in Warwickshire. Yep. So he's been around a bit, but I suspect now we're looking forward to the future and how we're going to take it forward. For those that don't know, there's also an ARISS contact coming up this coming week, Wednesday, down in Broadstairs. So anybody who has a VHF receiver that can tune to 145.8 megahertz around 11 o'clock. 10:57. Yeah, so coming up to 11 o'clock British Summer Time, you will almost certainly get a very strong signal from the space station. It's always worth listening to the answers and see how often the astronaut says, "That's a very good question." But there you go. It's all really good fun, and it's going to be a great event. And John, sitting here in the front, is also deeply involved in that one. So respect to you for getting us organised to do it. Anyway, no further ado. An ARISS update, challenge for STEAM and STEM outreach. And over to Ciaran.
Thank you, Graham. So, as Graham said, my name is Ciaran Morgan, Mike 0 X-Ray Tango Delta, and I'm the ARISS UK team lead for ARISS in the UK, as I said. So what I'm going to do today is going to give you a little bit of an introduction to what ARISS is, a little bit about how we operate, what's our prime purposes, and also talk a little bit about how much of a reach we actually make in the educational sector. And I've got numbers and data for worldwide reach as well for 2022, which hopefully you'll be impressed with. I'm then going to go on and talk a little bit about STEM outreach in schools, where it's always a challenge. And I'll talk a little bit about ARISS 2.0 as well, which is the new initiative that ARISS International is striking to make education and outreach that much more beneficial to students. And then I'll invite John to give a little bit of an update about what it actually takes to talk to a school and actually work with a school to do outreach. So ARISS. What is it? Well, it's as it says, it stands for Amateur Radio on the International Space Station. It's a program designed for school children worldwide to enthuse them in science, technology, engineering and mathematics, and also the art, which is the A in STEAM. It's designed for kindergarten, or using the American terms, kindergartens to year 16, which roughly equates to primary to sixth form for us here in the UK. But the whole idea is that the program of activities that are involved with ARISS help bring together the ideas of science and technology and engineering, and try to make future engineers and scientists for us for the future. Really importantly, we also provide a backup solution, a backup communication solution to the ISS, which has been used on a couple of occasions in the past. Like I said, the prime initiatives of ARISS, primarily we're working with STEM and STEAM outreach, and that is working with schools, working with school children to introduce them to science and technology and try to demystify the problems that some schools have with technological topics. Importantly, it's all done by a volunteer team, and the reach worldwide is quite spectacular. We also did develop hardware to go onto the space station itself, and in the coming years it'll be going on to the commercial space stations as well, and maybe even onto the lunar space station. And then finally, our third area of operations is flight operations itself, or space flight operations, which is the actual contacts that we carry out with the schools themselves. And I'm pleased to see we've got Ciaran here today, who's one of our Telebridge ground station operators, who helps us in that area quite considerably. So a little bit about outreach, participation. As you can see, we over the 2022 time period, we almost made 185,000 participants taking part in an ARISS contact. And that's school children, teachers, parents, and the like. And I'm not sure there's another part of the amateur radio hobby that actually develops and generates that much activity. We didn't have a contact in the UK in 2022, but typically when we do have a contact in the UK, we're reporting somewhere in the region of about 500 to 1,000 participants taking part in it. So as you can see, it's quite a draw, and it gets quite a representation from the UK as well. We've been going since 1983 in one shape, form or another. We started off on the shuttle using the SAREX missions, and talking about Owen Garriott, who performed the first amateur radio contact in space. That went on to the Mir space station, and was very well used by many of the astronauts, including the Russians and the Americans that visited Mir. But most recently, and for at least the last 20 years, we've been on the ISS itself as ARISS. As I said, Owen Garriott was the first person to do it, or to do amateur radio on the international, amateur radio in space. And the activities that he, for starters, the only way you could talk to an astronaut prior to Owen's flight was through space mission control, and that tended to be restricted to the likes of heads of governments or important figures. Bringing the activity down to school level and to amateurs themselves opened up a whole new area of outreach that the space agencies have taken on board and actually actively carry out. And we can now see that being replicated with the video type contacts that are carried out by the agencies. Also, we pioneered the development of SUITSAT, which was a Russian space suit which was packed full of radio gear and batteries, and was pushed out the door of the ISS, and that led to the development of deploying of small satellites from the space station as well.
On orbit day 3, excitement peaked among hams all over the world.
Somebody on 5-5.
Yeah. And you can see a little bit of manual rotator control there.
And then amateur radio's Man in Space went on the air.
This is W5LFL in Columbia. W5LFL in Columbia, orbiting the Earth at an altitude of 135 nautical miles. Passing over the U.S. West Coast and calling CQ.
W5LFL on STS-9, WA1JXN, WA1 Japan, X-ray Norway, WA1JXN, Frenchtown, Montana, standing by.
Hello, W1JXN, WA1 Juliet X-ray November. This is W5LFL. You're our first contact from orbit, WA1 Juliet X-ray November. How do you read, over?
It was quite a thrill. I was very surprised when he came back and said that quite clearly that I was the first contact from orbit.
This is WB5LMJ, Whiskey Bravo 5, Lima Mike Juliet in Lawton, Oklahoma, calling the Space Shuttle Columbia.
W5LFL, Whiskey Alpha for Yankee, Victor Charlie.
So as you can see, the excitement isn't just with school children, but actually with amateurs as well. And that leads on very nicely to the fact that 1983 is 40 years ago, and it's our 40th celebration this year, and we have planned a conference and celebration event in the Kennedy Space Center in February of next year. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of activities planned, but probably the most impressive one is the gala dinner, which we'll do our best to replicate tonight, but unfortunately this one for ARISS is going to be under the Saturn V rocket in the Kennedy Space Center itself. We are planning some commemorative on-air activities. We're hopeful to get the SSTV system back up and running very shortly and make that available for use again, which everybody has enjoyed and which does get a decent outreach. So what is STEM outreach and what is involved with it? Every ARISS contact has got to provide what's called an educational plan, and this plan has to set out in some detail how you're going to propose to introduce, enthuse and excite the children in a school with amateur radio and with space flight as well. The most question I get asked is what goes into the educational plan, and hopefully John will shortly be able to give us a little bit of an insight as to what he did with St. Peter's in Thanet, which is coming up this Wednesday. But the whole point of the educational plan, as I said, is to enthuse and excite the students to do it. So therefore you have to take in a lot of activities, be it observing the solar system, looking at the activities that go on by the space agencies or whatever. But more importantly, the activities that you plan have got to be appropriate for the age group, which can be a very, very challenging activity whenever you consider that the program goes from primary school all the way through to secondary school. So how to do it in reality? Well, for the Principium mission, we produced a document that we emailed out to all the schools that applied for a contact. And in this document, we provided a whole host of resources in terms of contacts, ESA and NASA references as well, and links to lesson plans where the teachers and the amateurs involved could work their way through the complexities of outreach itself and of STEM itself. That document is available for people if they want to get it, and my email address is up there. If you wanted, you can email me and I can email you a copy of it. But it describes in detail the process of an ARISS contact, what you have to do, what sort of things need to go into the educational plan in order to make it a success. And the selection of ARISS applications primarily comes down to how good some of these educational plans are. And really good educational plans get a much better chance of taking part in a contact. We've been doing contacts since 2000, November 2000, when the space station opened up, and the activities that have been carried on are things that individual amateurs or teachers have developed themselves. One of the things that ARISS is doing is ARISS 2.0, which encompasses an awful lot of activities for ARISS, but it's also the next vision, or the next generation vision, in terms of how educational outreach is carried out on the International Space Station, or indeed international space stations into the future. The whole point of it is to get more and more consistent outcomes for all the people involved, and involves a whole host of activities where the goal is to make them available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that there's no reliance or there's little reliance on the astronaut's time except for the actual contact itself. So what does STEM education sort of look like? A couple of pictures just to show you some examples. There's the obvious amateur radio technology side of things, and making use of portable equipment to introduce children to the delights, if you like, of RF and signals from space. But importantly, it comes down to things like electronics, space exploration, throwing in typical subjects like physics, even history. You can argue that an awful lot of the space race has contributed to the history of the 20th century as well. And more recently, I'll get it one day. More recently, art has come into it as well. So there's been a really big push to ensure that those who are not necessarily technical minded but artistically minded are actually included in all of these activities as well. So some of the activities that ARISS 2.0 encompasses is, or one of them is called Stereo. This stands for Student and Teacher Education via Radio Experimentation and Operations, and as you can see has got three main objectives. I'm not proposing to talk an awful lot about Sparky, simply because John has got a talk later today detailing Sparky or experience of Sparky talking to junior school children. But these, the Sparky system basically introduces things like standing waves, travelling waves, RF, signals from space, Raspberry Pi computers which have got SDR dongles attached to them, and has been very much trialled in the States over the last year and a bit. And as you can see, the delight from some of the teachers involved sort of really does make it sort of a lifelong learning opportunity. And importantly, that project itself has been supported by the ARDC, which also gives us the opportunity to carry on our spaceflight operations activities, such as contacts with schools. Like I said, Sparky has got a Raspberry Pi computer with an SDR dongle, and it introduces the kids to very much radio signals and viewing radio signals and decoding them as well. Another activity is called STAR, which is the Space Telerobotics Using Amateur Radio. And this was trialled again in the US last year, particularly with a student who worked out an awful lot of the complexities of how to control robots via amateur radio or the internet or local. It comes from a legacy from Keith Keith Pugh, thank you, Graham, who was one of the long-term ARISS advocates in the States and mentors, but essentially links into the activity of going onto the moon and onto rovers, lunar rovers and Mars rovers, and trying to introduce a little bit of that excitement into the exploration of radio. It operates in a couple of, three different modes. There's Bluetooth, Internet, or APRS. The Bluetooth and the Internet are primarily designed to allow school kids to play with robots, control them, make them navigate obstacles itself locally or potentially remote over the Internet. But the one area that actually is the most exciting one is the APRS one, where the idea is to use the APRS capability to send commands to the robot and for the robot to carry out those commands in terms of navigating around a course or around around obstacles. The results of the intern working on it can be seen here, and sort of some of the software that he developed. But basically, he was able to command the M-bot robot, which is the one that has centered on the STAR program, and actually able to make it move across a room and, like I said, navigate some obstacles. So ARISS 2.0, in summary, represents a new way of doing STEAM or STEM education outreach for schools. It augments what the schools would normally do in introducing STEM or STEAM topics to their students, and tries to encompass the multitude of spaceflight type operations that occur, be it low Earth orbit or even lunar or further than that. And as I said, it's available, or the intention is that it will be available 24/7, and it's open to everybody. So it's not just school kids that can access this and use it. It's adults as well. And most of the work that has been done by the interns has been made available on GitHub, so you can actually download and experiment with the activities themselves. So, what is STEM outreach in practice? What does it look like? Well, St. Peter in Thanet School is having a contact this Wednesday at 9:57 UTC, which the team and I are heading down after the colloquium to set up and support. They've engaged in quite an extensive range of activities. You may remember the school, or one of its pupils, Isabella, got noticed and reported on in the press last year because she made a wonderful little contact with Chell Lindgren, and Chell later emailed out a photo of Isabella on his iPad in the cupola window, which was quite impressive. And I think I'm right, Matt, in saying that it was his favourite time or his favourite conversation. So what does it look like in practice? Well, I'm going to ask John Hislop, G7 OHO, to come along and describe a little bit about what he's done at St Peter's in Thanet itself. So it's the bottom button.
Good morning. I'm John, G7HO. I'm a STEM ambassador. You probably know me from the Coding Week last month and my work with the STEAMettes, a group of youngsters who gave a virtual talk a couple of years ago having fun with amateur radio, electronics and coding. Right, well, 6 years ago we helped Worsley House School in Broadstairs with their contact with Tim Peake, and as you can see, we invited lots of other schools as well, lots of children, and we made contact with Tim eventually. We don't talk about that, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was great, and we followed it up with YOTA events in December and British Science Week. We did a space club with a school, and one of the teachers got their foundation license. But then COVID hit and it kind of died. So we thought, what school shall we go for next? Should we go for a different school? Should we go for a primary school or a secondary school? If you go for a primary school, it's easier in that their curriculum is more flexible. They can take time out to do different things. Secondary schools are more constrained with the GCSEs and Ofsted. Right. It's very difficult for teachers to say, well, the only thing you could do would be with an after-school club. All right? Breaking into their lessons is impossible. Okay, so we chose a primary school close by. Which one would we choose? The one that Matt's daughter goes to. We put the application in a year ago. The teacher there was very keen, and since so from last year we did various activities until we got to this term. So we helped them with British Science Week. As you can see, they're sending light Morse code to each other, and they love that. One child said, "This was the best lesson ever." It's true, yeah. Right, so St Peter's in Thanet. And of course, Isabella there in the space station. So it had to be St Peter's School. Yeah, and you need a very keen science coordinator who will give up a lot of time towards this contact. This is Nathan Williams, the science coordinator, and he's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, Matt's nodding there. Amazing teacher. The kids love him. He thinks, he's the best teacher in the school. So once we got the go-ahead, right, we were successful. We were told in the summer, I think it was, and that was it. The school went mad. They went straight out to TK Maxx and got a spacesuit. Right, and this was in the girls section, I'm pleased to add, yeah, thanks to Isabella's fighting, yeah, okay. And then we did some astronomy. Ciaran mentioned the solar system, so you got to include space as well. So this is during Science Week, Space Week, and I went in and talked about the moon, because I run another group, the Ramsgate Stargazers. So they did experiments making craters to simulate craters on the moon. Again, they enjoyed that. You can see my telescope there. Okay, and another astronomer did some solar astronomy. Children looking through the eyepiece there at the sun. Yes, looking at the dark spots, yeah, sunspots. And AMSAT was able to get a message, a personal message for the school, which we had to download. So we, she's tracking the FunCube satellite going across the sky. We got all the data on the telemetry and the fitter message, a personal message to the children. That was brilliant. Yeah. So, so this term it's been a bit crazy because we started September, we only had a few weeks before the contact. One of the things we got them to do was to play a YouTube video of this astronaut reading a story to the children. Ada Lace is one of the books. Yeah, so a little story at the end of the school day about the space station and amateur radio. Yeah. The Space Club, 20 selected students who were asking the questions, were privileged to have a personal Zoom call from Chell. So there he is in the States talking to the children about his experience. I mean, how good was that? Yeah. I saw the Sparky project on a video, and I thought, this is what we need to, well, that's what it's for. The Sparky project, which I'll talk about this afternoon, is to promote the amateur radio to schools that are doing an ISS contact. And I did some experiments with them to explain what radio communications are all about, and as you can see, having fun there. They had to see the space station for real, didn't they? I'm sure if I asked this audience here, have you seen the space station for real, everyone's hand would go up. I go to groups and I just get one or two hands up. It'd be so nice to have everyone's hands up. Has everyone seen? Yeah. So we sent the times to Nathan, and the children could then, before bedtime, 8 o'clock, have a look at the space station, going across the sky. Yeah. And this week, I've given a talk about the International Space Station, explained to the children who's up there. All right? 7 astronauts, including Jasmine, who they'll be talking to. So I told them to go away, find out about Jasmine. What's her background? Yeah. Is it? Yeah. I think it's Laurel. Laurel's the one that's got fluent in 4 languages. They're incredible superhumans, aren't they? We will follow it up when it's all over, when the excitement dies down. We will follow it up with other activities. They're keen to do YOTA in December. We'll bring in a transceiver and they can speak on the radio waves. Mission 0 is another thing they can do. They can code a Raspberry Pi with a sense hat to make a little image on the sense hat, and it goes up to the space station and it's run inside. So they need to learn how to code in Python. But yeah. So yeah, we hope to continue our association with the school, and so it's not just a one-off. But if you're thinking of doing an ISS contact with a school or whatever, go for it. It's a lot of commitment, time and effort, but it's well worth it. Okay, I'll pass it back to, I think that's the last slide.
So as you can see, there's a lot of dedication needed to actually do one of these ISS contacts. They're not something that just can happen for free, if you like. But the enjoyment that everybody gets out of doing these contacts is quite spectacular. I've been doing them for 15 years now, and thoroughly enjoy them, and every single one of them is different itself. But like John said, it's a big commitment. It really does take a committed teacher in the school to be part of it. Secondary schools are not impossible, they're just that little bit harder to work on. But the idea is that by the time these primary school children have moved on and moved into secondary school, their interest in science and technology will carry on with them, so that they then take the science and technology type subjects which lead on to the engineers and the scientists of the future. And that's it, so thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, we do. So the question is, do any of the schools have an opportunity to evaluate how they've taken part in the scheme itself? Yes, there is. There's monitoring carried out itself. We look to see who has or how many school children have taken part in the activity, but more importantly, we try to follow that up year on year afterwards, or a couple of years afterwards. And the best example I can give you is the Principia mission, where there was a real concerted effort to look at schools that had carried out a contact and see what the effect was itself. And we were noted very heavily as one of the top 3 programs that produced interactive experiences for the children, but more importantly was noted for its effect long term as well. And there's one school, the RMS school in Rickmansworth, I think it is, had physics classes going on from, it was a girls' school, but they had physics classes going on from GCSE to A-level, where they typically had 2 or 3 students doing physics. After we'd done the Tim Peake contact, that number went up to about 18. So there is a definite impact, and we like to try and stay in touch with some of our ex-schools to find out how they're doing.
Also tell the impact on Facebook. I put on Facebook that we're doing this contact in Broadstairs, and I mentioned amateur radio, of course, and I've got 180 likes already. Yeah, so...
Ciaran, you said that the ARISS programme was entirely resourced by volunteers. So how do prospective volunteers make themselves known?
Good question. Usually by contacting one of us, you'll normally see the ARISS team walking around with the polo shirts on, but we do have some sort of general email addresses where volunteers can drop their details into us, but just getting on and doing things with school is generally the first step to volunteering, and having a little bit of background experience in the first instance. My email address was on the slides itself, so you're welcome to email me anytime at the RSGB. So that's a question about take up to the hobby that the ARISS program does. Again, my experience goes back to the Principia mission, and one of the things that we did with Principia, and in fact with all the contacts subsequent to that, has been to encourage local amateurs, or get the local amateur radio club to try and run training sessions for the school children to actually get their license. Tends to be more successful in the secondary schools because the children are more adapted to the subjects themselves. But we have had some experience of students taking their license taking part in the contact, and then going on to get their intermediate and sometimes their advanced licenses as well. Yep.
Yes, thank you for your talk. I wasn't clear that when you go into schools and you set up the contacts, is there a legacy of the hardware? So do the schools, or can they raise, which is difficult, raise their own money for equipment?
Again, another good question. The way we operate in the UK is that we have a central team who predominantly take all the equipment to the school that's actually carrying out the contact. Trying to establish a ground station or an amateur radio station inside a school is a tricky activity, and it really relies upon having somebody interested in the school taking that activity on. We have had that happen. Sandringham School, for example, which was the very first Tim Peake school that we did. The head teacher was incredibly enthusiastic, and he's now got quite an active amateur radio group going. But like I said, it does require ideally a teacher who is an amateur to be able to effect that. Okay.
Any further questions? Sorry, any further questions for Ciaran or for John? I've been checking on the internet, on the web stream. I don't think there's any questions there. In fact, there's been one or two technical issues outside this room. So if you're watching on the web stream now, which I think is working at the moment, and you've had interruptions, we apologise, but it's downstream or upstream, or it's outside our control directly. But anyway, thank you very much indeed, both of you, for your presentation. Really good to see all the work that's being done to encourage the next 1 or 2 or 3 generations. We've somehow got to share our passion with the younger generation. So thank you for your efforts.